Hey everybody, welcome back to another Dice Tower review. My name is Z Garcia.
I'm Mike Delisio.
Today we're taking a look at Trekking Through History. This is a very light sort of set collection-ish game in which you are, well, look at that, trekking through history. It's a sci-fi theme in which you are going through different events in history. You are collecting those cards. You are filling in your itinerary and ultimately trying to, of course, have the most points. This is from the same company that brought us Trekking the World and Trekking the National Parks. Sort of a spiritual follow-up to that, but really pretty different from those games. Those two that I mentioned are clearly iterations upon one another. This isn't quite that. So, if you know those, you'll sort of have a reference point. If you don't, it doesn't matter because I'm going to show you how this game works. We'll come on back after that. We'll tell you what we think of it. Here we're going to be taking a look at a game for 2 players. To set up the game, I'm going to shuffle up the 3 H decks. H1 is the one that begins in play, so we shuffle that up and then splay out 5 cards. Shuffle up deck 2 and 3 and set them aside. We've got a number of ancestors up here based on the number of players. Then we've got the clock with the players' pocket watches here. Everybody has one of these that can hold their time crystals, and they begin with 1 in those receptacles. And then everybody is given 4 itineraries. And we are ready to begin. So, the first thing that happens in this first age is each player is going to pick one of their itineraries. So you'll go through these, figure out which one you might want, and you're going to put that into play, setting the other ones aside for now, and the other player will, of course, do the same thing. Let's just say he goes with that one there, and then keep the other ones aside, and then you are good to go. Whoever's pocket watch is on top of this stack here is going to begin, and you are off. So the way this works is, you are going to be spending time to travel to these different events in history and claim them and start building up a lineup of places and things you have done. They are going to cost you time, as listed down here in the bottom corner, and you are going to get tokens for doing these various things. These tokens are printed on the cards themselves, as well as the spots below here, so that if I, for example, take this card here, and I cheer at the Ancient Olympics, then I'm going to get 1 blue token and the red token printed below, so I would get 1 of each of these. These tokens are going to come over to my itinerary and go to the highest empty spot that can take 1 of those. So 1 would go there, 1 would go there. And I continue filling this up, getting bonuses along the way. Victory points right here, more time crystals here, and then sometimes victory points for completing lines across, as you can see there. So the time crystals themselves, well, they'll be worth a point at the end of the game, but their real power is allowing you to get a discount on these cards. And the reason you want discounts on these cards is because, well, you'll be able to take more cards. But also, it's always the turn of the person who is last in the time clock here. So, we'll begin with the teal player there, who is going to be right over here. And they're going to acquire one of these cards. Now, ideally, you want to have a very long trip that has to be chronological before you have to take a card that is no longer in chronological sequence and forces you to begin a new trip, setting the old one aside and beginning again. The reason for that is because if you have a trek that is particularly long, you are going to get bonuses at the end of the game. So say if I go to 6 places, before I have to break the chronology of these places, then I'm going to get a bonus 10 points at the end of the game. So teal players first, they're going to indeed go ahead and take this cheering at the Ancient Olympics card. It's going to cost them 2 time, though they could, again, spend this time crystal and make that only 1 time. You can never reduce a card below a single time unit, but you can spend multiples of these to bring it all the way down to, at most, 1. They will take this card and they are going to get the blue that's on it and the red that's on here. So they'll take 1 of each, they will put them on their itinerary like so, and they begin their trip with this card. The cards are going to slide over and refill, and then it'll be whoever is in last place. So our friend over here is going to go. You can also buy the top card of the deck, by the way, but there's no bonus here on the playmat. So they are going to acquire this card. They're going to hit the books with Alexander the Great. That's going to cost them 3. But they're going to spend this time crystal to only go 2. 1, 2. And they will take this card. They are going to get red. they're going to get wild, which can go anywhere, and yellow. So red, yellow, wild. The red has to go here, of course. The yellow has to go there. And then the wild can go anywhere I want it to. So maybe I'll put it right here. If I put it there, then I'm getting a little bit closer to getting these 5 points. I could even put it there and get 3 points right now on the score track. But they'll do that. And then this moves over, replenishes, and they go again because they are the last one now. If there's only folks in the back are stacked, then whoever's on top is going to be the one taking the next turn. So they are going to take a card. Again, if they take something that is later, chronologically speaking, that's fine. It just goes on top of this one like so, and now it's a 2-card trek. If they take something that is older, like this one here or this one, then they have to set aside this trip. You just gather up all the cards, set them aside, and begin a new trip. Obviously, right now, they do not want to wrap up with a single card. That would actually be a penalty of 3 victory points, as you can see right here. So perhaps they'll take this card back here, which is very expensive, but, you know, it might be worth it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they will get a blue, they will get a green, and then they get a time crystal for that and a time crystal for that. So 2 time crystals here, and a blue and a green, which goes on this spot, giving them another time crystal. So lots of possible manipulation here, or just victory points. And now it'll be the teal player, so they take this, they put that there, and they'll likely take a couple of turns in a row, because, this player jumped ahead quite a bit. So they'll go ahead and take a card now. We'll take a look. Something else you are allowed to do is you can visit your ancestor in this game. It's going to cost you 3 time. It has a wild symbol, and it has a question mark where the year normally would go. What that means is that that card can go after anything, and in fact just becomes the year that it's sitting on top of. So if I did this, spent the 3 time, got my wild, and put it there, it can always go on top of anything. And then the next card after this one just has to be, ideally, sooner or farther ahead in time than the one that you see. So this becomes another 708 BCE. So that lets you get a longer trip, maybe wait out this pool to cycle a little bit, or just grow your trip in a very easy way. And again, the number of ancestors in the game is based on the number of players. So there's a limited number of those. So they'll take one and they'll continue advancing. Perhaps they'll take, let's see, they might take this one here. That's going to cost them 3. And they'll get a blue and a time crystal. Blue, time crystal. They go again. We'll move all of these. Perhaps now they will take this one over here, which is going to give them 2 red and a green and a wild. It's going to cost them 4. So maybe they'll spend 1 time crystal here and to go ahead and do 1, 2, 3. And put all these out. Red, red. If you do get something that is no longer available, you simply don't get it. You no longer will do anything with that. So they'll put the green here, and they'll take this wild, and they'll put it here and get 2 points for that. Advancing their time marker, or their victory point tracker, down 2 points. Once they fill in these 2, ideally, before the day is over, they'll get their 9 points. And now it comes back to this player who is in the back here. So this is going to continue until we all run out of time. If I am over here somewhere and I take any card that gets me here exactly, I am going to get a punctuality bonus of 3 victory points. If I do not, that's fine. I'll still stop here though. So for example, this player being here, assuming this player is done, and this player would be the next one, they could take 4. That's fine. You can take this, you get everything, and you just stop at that spot. But if I can reduce that down to exactly 2, or take a 2, then I am going to get that punctuality bonus. Once this is done and we're both back there, then all of these cards are going to get cleaned up. We are going to select deck 2 here and spread that out, and we begin day 2 with a new itinerary. At the end of the day, you're going to clear this off. Anything you scored, obviously you keep, but anything you didn't quite make it to, you missed out on. You select a new itinerary from the ones you've got remaining, and we go on to day 2. And then finally, we go on to day 3. At the end of all 3 days of time traveling, we are going to score a couple of final things, mainly the trips you have made. So every one of these you've cleared. So say, for example, this player did this, and they did that, and then they did that, and then they wanted to take this one. Once that's done, well, these now no longer would work, so I'd have to close this up, set it aside, and begin a new one. And at the end of the game, this here is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards long. That's 7 victory points. You do that for all your trips, and whoever has the most points, counting these, as I said, as a point each as well, is going to be the winner of the game. In the box, you're also going to get a little module, a little sort of variant called Time Warps, and this is going to shake up your game a little bit. The way that's going to work out is you take these small cards, you shuffle them up, you select 3, 1 for each day of your trip, and you are going to place those in the center here of the table. So you can put 1 there in the center of the clock, and that is going to modify that day with whatever the rule is. In this case, it's an always-on ability that simply says all history cards cost 1 hour less, but not less than 1. They don't award additional benefits. And then maybe next day, the second day, it'll be this, where you can place one of your tokens. They give you an extra token here. It looks just like the scoring one. And you can choose this action instead of taking a card. You'll go on there, spend 1 time, and it says gain the benefits from your most recent card. Again, so that's very good. Let's say this is my most recent card. I can go there for a single time and get all this again. Fantastic. And perhaps, this last one here for the 3rd day would be this one. When you land on another player's pocket watch, each player with a pocket watch underneath you is going to get 2 victory points. You're going to avoid doing that, landing exactly where someone else is. There are quite a few of these, and they are going to shake up the game in very interesting ways. So there you go. This one's pretty cool. Lose any number of time crystals, gain a wild for each one you give up. Very good. So there you go. Those are the Time Warps, and that is the game, folks. All right, so there you go. That's the game, Trekking Through History. This is one that I believe we both backed on Kickstarter.
That is correct.
And we were very excited about it. It's one that I liked, Trekking the World, and Trekking the National Parks is a fine game as well. Very light game. The company has certainly evolved, and the designer as well. So Trekking the World was a beautiful game, is a beautiful game. It's a lovely game with some interesting things happening in it. And this one was one that I thought looked very captivating. It's one that looked, again, sort of different enough that it warranted jumping on it as well. It didn't feel like, well, one's going to push the other one out. I wasn't getting that feeling from it. So, and I think that's true. I think that is something that that stands out from this game, is that it isn't just another iteration of that. This is its own thing. Right?
Absolutely it is. And kind of the genesis of how this project came about, I think, is interesting, too, in the sense that for people that had backed Trekking the World, which I had, the publisher did a little bit of a crowdsourcing type of a thing, which was, hey, we've got some different ideas for theming that we'd like to explore. What do you think? And me being a previous history teacher for a number of years, I was immediately drawn to this idea of trekking through history. And so I voted on that. So I was actually very happy to see that was the one that kind of won. I think it's a very ripe topic, obviously, right?
Absolutely, right.
The idea of being able to travel, it's something that people just talk about. Hey, if you can go to any place in history, what would it be? What would be the favorite place you would like to travel and visit? And so this leans into that. And it also allows for some really interesting, diverse kind of areas of travel to go to. And I think they did a good job of that, of kind of giving you a lot of different aspects of history and not only the obvious ones, too.
Sure, right.
There were some very interesting choices they made that I noticed as a former history teacher. Oh, wow, they went with Hammurabi, huh? Wow, I wouldn't have expected that type of a thing. So I do appreciate how they handled that.
It's really well curated, that's for sure. Yeah, it's an interestingly curated game, and thematically they went to some neat places. The artwork, much like the artwork in Trekking the World, is gorgeous. It's varied, it's vibrant, it's very nice. Let's talk about gameplay here. The game's a looker. You don't need us to tell you that. In our opinion, it is. You might not like the look, but we think it is, and you can decide that on your own. The gameplay here is very smooth. It's a very easy to play game, right? As you saw in the overview. You, on your turn, if you're the last one in that clock, it's your turn, and you take a card. That's it. And I really like that simplicity. That simplicity does not mean that there aren't things to think about, though, and that's the interesting thing. There are a couple of sort of ideas at odds here. This idea of filling out that itinerary to unlock bonuses. That's sort of short-term, today sort of achievements. And then there's the idea of having a really long trip in which you don't mess with the time stream too much so that you can go chronologically and put out 8 cards before you have to put that trip away and start with something old again. Because you're going to get points for that at the end of the game. And so, which one do you favor? What do you go for? Do you sort of just vamp for a round and take one of those ancestors, visit one of your ancestors? It's a wild token too, so that's not nothing. But it sort of lets you wait and see the refresh of the lineup out there. Maybe a year you're hoping for will come out. One thing I did not show in the overview is they do include this, it's not a pamphlet, it's sort of just a printout, a list of the years represented in each deck. So if you want to go a little bit deeper, you can have that out and see what's coming up in deck number 2 and deck number 3. So that you know, how likely am I to continue from this year forward when the next deck shows up. And I really like that. I think it's just a clean design. The idea came up, I think you were doing a live stream, and the idea came up of, is this game as light as it looks? Is it that simple? Is it that basic? I think it is simple. I think it's a very easy game to play. It's definitely, I would say, a family weight style game. But it's an engaging weight game. It's one that does not play itself. I think there are interesting choices here that perhaps aren't even obvious at first. I think this game is subtle in many ways. There are avenues you can pursue, and they all seem to be pretty viable.
Yeah, I agree. And this game does something that I think the best games in this weight does, which is exactly what you're saying, which is that depending upon the group you're playing it with, you can play it in a very kind of light and breezy way where you maybe take the most obvious decisions and have a great time and still really enjoy the experience. But if you really do want to kind of find some of those things, they're there. There are some really clever little decisions that you can make. The distribution of the decks are not as obvious as they might appear. It's not strictly chronological. It's not like the earliest cards are only in the first day, and there's a distribution of those cards where you can really kind of get clever about when you choose to end a trek, because you're not going to always end a trek and start a new one because you have no other option. That may happen. It may happen where there's no card that fits in your trek anymore. All right, well, I'm going to go for a new trek. The way that the points are distributed on those treks is that the maximum points you get is at 10. I think you get 30 points for a 10 card trek. And then for every card after that, it's only 3 points, which is not the same spread as it is from a 9 to a 10, in other words. So there are some strategic decisions that you can make if you want to go deeper, and they have provided you that opportunity by showing you that card distribution. And even little clever things like the thematic, that mechanism of who goes next is oftentimes thought of as a time track. I've seen it referred to as a time track. And that fits thematically here. And so oftentimes, like you said, even those little mitigation things like the time crystals, those are all things that don't add a lot of complexity necessarily to the game. But if you want to play it on that more deep strategic level, that adds to that. It's never going to be a brain burner necessarily. But there are compelling choices there for you if you want to play the game in that manner.
It's very tactical also. I should probably point that out. You say it's very strategic, and there are some strategies you can try to employ. But it is a richly tactical game. It's a reacting game in many ways. It's about seeing what's out there and deciding that card is a huge jump ahead in time. Not ideal, but it gives me the 2 blue tokens I need to get down here and then score this line across for 8 points or whatever. Is that worth it? Is that going to mess me up long term? I am, skipping a gap in time here. This trip is going to run a little short. How do I do this? When do I do that? There's also an interesting tension at the very end of the game because you do not want to end with a trip that has a single card.
Right.
So you have to be careful. Towards the end of the game, there's this tension of, do I fold this trip up, start another one now, and put out at least 2 or 3 cards?
Right.
Or do I keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and then one round before I would be done, I got to fold this trip up and start a new one with a single card, minus 3 points for that. There's also the punctuality bonus of having to, hit that 12 right on the nose. You get a few points for that. The game feels good because it keeps rewarding you for things. I think is part of it.
I agree.
Every time you do something, you get a little injection of history. You can take the card and flip it over and read about that historical event or setting or what have you. You get a few points here, a time crystal there. It keeps feeding you these moments of good. It keeps rewarding you with little things. Yeah, you might get close to something and not achieve it. But you move on to the next day, and now you've got this whole new board in front of you. You're like, ooh, okay, what's out here? What are the new cards? What can I go for now? I really like that. So 2 more things we want to talk about here is, I did show that little time warp deck,
right,
which is something they sort of lock away from you at the beginning. Don't open this yet, play the game. It's fantastic. I think it's a really excellent little deck of cards that livens up and spices the game. If you are a gamer, don't shy away from that. You can crack that open and play it right away. If you are teaching this to non-gamers, or you're playing with a mixed age group, then yeah, don't worry about it for right now. The game holds up without it. But it's so good.
I agree.
I really like that little deck. The variety in there is superb. And then the other thing is solo mode in this.
Yep.
This includes a solo mode. If it's the Kickstarter edition, from what I understand, then you're going to get a solo mode. And that's really good as well. Very clean, works smoothly. I mean, you've played solo, I've played solo. You did a video for it, so you can find that and watch Mike playing that, in fact. And it's just neat, yeah.
Yeah, it's very good. It's a very, very solid solo variant. And I agree with the time warp. I think, you only play with 3 in a game. You randomly choose 3 and 1 for each day. Mm-hmm. And, after we played with it the first time, we looked through that whole deck, and every single one of those cards, I was like, that's great. That's great. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just think that it's well implemented as well. It's a subtle little change, but it's good, and I agree with you. If you're playing with people that play hobby games, put it in there. I don't think you need to shy away from it.
Yeah.
Very, very well done.
There we go. So, final thoughts, Mike, and your rating for this.
So here's the thing. I'm glad that you mentioned kind of early on that this is part of somewhat of a trilogy, but... Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't even necessarily call it a trilogy. It sounds like it's part of a line. You know what I mean? That they're going to keep going for.
Yeah.
This feels the most distinct of that line, and it has got me excited for where they're going.
Yep.
I'm struggling to think of what I wish they had done differently. Production-wise, rock solid.
I agree.
Great quality cards, fantastic artwork. The plastic components and the wooden components, sometimes that's not a good mix. Even the neoprene, there's all kinds of different form factors here, and they all work. It's a lovely package all the way around. The scalability of the game seems fantastic. The length of play seems fantastic. The variability of the types of people you can play this game to and introduce it to, the type of game experiences that you can have.
Yeah.
All fantastic. So I'm coming in at a 9. Because yes, it's a light game. Yes, it doesn't have maybe some of those strategic depths that other games may have. But what it does fantastically. I'm trying to think of what to knock it for. And so that's why I'm coming in at a 9. I really think they just knocked it out of the park with this one.
I'm coming in at the same thing, actually.
Oh, wow.
I'm also giving it a 9, and the only reason I can give it that is because I think the replayability here really long-term might take a little bit of a hit. That's a minor quibble, mind you, very minor. This is a superb game.
Yeah.
Really fun, very engaging game. I think a lot of different folks out there are going to like this one. If you are a light gamer, I think a lot here is going to appeal to you. If you are a seasoned gamer who's played a lot of things, I think you're going to enjoy this too. And I think you'll quickly find some subtleties here that might take non-gamers a little more to discover. You throw in those extra cards from the time warp, I think this is going to hook you as well. So absolutely, strong 9. This is a seal of excellence right here, folks. Definitely look into this one. If the theme appeals to you, if the look appeals to you, this game will not disappoint you. So there you go. That is Trekking Through History. My name is Z Garcia.
I'm Mike Delisio.
We will see you another time. Huh? Oh.